This is the session on how to win when employers aren't the decision makers. So if that sounds right, or you aren't now ready to move anywhere else, then by all means you can stay. I am just going to facilitate this to start off with, but the whole idea is that you get involved and we have a discussion generally about what the problems are and the things we can face, and we can go away with some actions. My name's Stephen Beck. I'm chair for this session. I'm a coordinator of Troublemakers at Work, just trying to make things happen. But I do believe that it is about the workers. It's not about me being at the front here. And the working class, a very important part of this. John is from Unite. I'm sure he'll give his own little introduction. I'm NEU rep, an activist and officer, and my main role is on the Disabled Members Forum, standing up for the rights of disabled people, and trying to get the social model of disability adopted across workplaces rather than the medical model, which still causes some problems. So if I just go through the basic objectives as they were, and I think we can adapt those quite easily. And if you want anything else added to it, I'm perfectly willing to be flexible to facilitate discussion. So initially we wanted to identify what power structures we were struggling with. John will start off on that one, I'm hoping. And we're going to try and map the complex decision-making organisations that you might come across, so you know where the action needs to happen. And it's a question of holding to account the people that are directly holding the influence rather than perhaps your employers. I'll give you a straightforward example of that. My employer is the chair of governors of an education academy trust. Technically, the name on my contract is that of the head teacher. It is fairly clear that the business manager makes 95% of the decisions, and it is normally on the basis of, like, sorry, we can't afford that. And with that, you're talking ordinary services, not just like wages or things as well. There's very much a hierarchical structure there. We've all got different experiences. One of the things I really like about Troublemakers is it brings people together from a whole range of settings, and so we can share our tactical knowledge. I think one of the most important things I've learned already this morning is the strength of the BMA to actually talk about like their worth. And I think certainly in the education union that gets hidden behind sometimes like, well, we're all in it for the kids, but at the same time you're doing yourself down in terms of your value as an employee and a worker. So any tactical knowledge, organising strategies that you have in the room, any successful campaigns that you've been part of, any awareness you've got on multi-tier employment structures, or any indirect decision makers, people that you wouldn't necessarily be expecting to hold the power over you in your workplace. And then we would try to finish with building collective action so that we can strengthen ourselves in our ability to create trouble at work. I think that is one of the most important things. A lot of the time, you're not trying to actually create trouble, you're trying to help. I very much view it that if you work with your managers and your employers and the people that make the decisions and you come to an agreement, the best thing to say is thank you. But they need to realise that if they're not prepared to meet you, then they've got to fight. And I think we need to model some of the circumstances towards that rather than just giving up sometimes. So developing our practical skills for coordinating across different employment statuses, different unions and workplaces so that the working class and the workers in those places can maximise their power to maintain their terms and conditions and security, job security, particularly with precarious workers. So, John, would you like to introduce yourself? I've got more to say, but I want it all to be about me. Oh, you can use
it. Hello, everyone. I'm John Mulligan. I'm a Unite rep. I'm a clinical psychologist, and up until last month, I was a striking worker. Our mental health services have been striking over the last 9 months. I don't know if people know that, or they might be sick to the back. Right, there's a few people going no. So I'm going to just spend the first couple of minutes just explaining kind of what happened, and hopefully out of that some sense will be made on my side with regard to structures and stuff like that. But how long have I got, by the way, just to... Oh, wow. Well, that's amazing. You know, I was just saying at the start, like, kind of, this is a terrible thing to admit, but I left my bloody speech on the couch at home, and I've realised in the tram on the way down, and you know what, it was the best thing that happened, because well, in my head, this is much better. You know what I've got here since I got down. You know, but so I'm a mental health worker, and as I say, part of a collection of Unite and Unison staff who went out on strike for 9 months. So last November, we started off. We were striking to try and draw attention to the diabolical situation in Manchester and across the country in terms of secondary care mental health services. So secondary care is for people with more severe and enduring mental health difficulties. Primary care, it's pretty insulting to say mild to moderate, I know, but that's the kind of differentiation in a sense. But secondary care services are absolutely horrendous. Thousands of people are getting absolutely no service at all in Manchester. They're under our services, but they're not receiving any decent service at all. And many hundreds are dying. Thousands actually are dying each year unnecessarily and early from preventable difficulties. And that extends to the country. There's 43,800 people with severe mental health difficulties who die from preventable illnesses every year across England. Now, that 43,800 is coming from a population of 613,000, give or take. So it's a huge amount of people are dying every year. And sadly, that's been met with silence. It's been met with shrugs of shoulders and bullshit statements from politicians year on year. Every time there's a serious incident, that's the only time it seems to happen. We get a news cycle every time someone's killed. And it is a pathetic situation that we're the moral injury that staff experience, the distress that our service users and the relatives and family members is it's huge. So we had enough. We had 4 years of grievance. We tried our best. We did loads of submitted evidence. Early intervention psychosis services. For every £1 you spend in early intervention, you save £15 down the line. And that saving starts like the first year. You save 4,000 per patient. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's no financial reason. In fact, there's multiple financial reasons why you should invest in our early intervention services. It just makes sense, doesn't it? You invest early, you get in there early, you support somebody to get back on track, get the hell away from services and get on with their lives and be comfortable. So we tried and we tried and we tried and we tried and we tried to convince everybody, and nobody seemed to be listening. So we were left nothing left but our collective action. And we used our strength together as a united staff group, because that's the thing. Sometimes people forget about strike action. You almost think that it's a bunch of people who are disgruntled and pissed off and upset and burnt out. And certainly there's times where we're all of those things. But we're a unified staff group in our team. We've got the lowest turnover, the lowest sickness rates in our NHS trust, and we've got the highest union density in many of the compared to many of the services, and the most committed staff. Obviously, I'm slightly biased, but a pretty compassionate crew. And so we're fed up, like seeing the death and destruction before us, and we just had enough. So we went out and strike for 9 months. I guess this is going to speak to some of the structures and the power and stuff. But as a clinical psychologist, one of the things that working alongside over the years with people and learning from people who've been through it is the crucial, most important thing is do not rush to intervention until you have your formulation. I must say that once a month. The trainees who come and work with me are pissed off listening to it, But you've got to work out your plan first before you start coming up with ideas. And I think that's one of the most important take-home messages. We can talk in generalized ideas. We can talk about my strike action, but actually each and every workplace, each and every collection of staff, each and every problem or difficulty is unique, and it should be treated as such. And what you got to do is you got to sit down with your colleagues and you got to figure out what is the problem, break it down. What's causing it? What's keeping it going? What are the solutions or potential solutions? And then how do we get there? And who do we need to convince? And who do we need to talk to? And who do we need to put pressure on? And who do we need to embarrass? And who do we need to, I don't know, I was going to start, I almost said threaten, but no, I'm not going to go down that road in this current climate. I mightn't make it out of the room before getting arrested. But there's, it's crucially important that you figure out, because it's just not straightforward. It took us quite a while to figure out that the chief exec and all the people high up in the trust, by the way, I'm speaking in a personal capacity just in case, but I'm also a Unite rep if anyone's kind of concerned. The amount of actual power that the executives and the high ups in trusts have is actually questionable. I didn't realize it. I just thought that they had rubber stamp and they go, yes, yes. But actually they've got fuck all money. And when you've got hardly any money, you've got very little power. And they're also politicians. They're wedded to the government of the day. They're tied to them. They have to pretend that things are looking good when they're shit. They have to pretend that there's no blame when somebody dies. They have to pretend that they're on board with the latest bullshit fad that 5-year cycles bring, and stupid politicians with their narcissism bring to the situation, trying to make their little stamp, and forget about evidence-based practice, forget about human beings, forget about all those deaths over there. I just have this beautiful initiative that I've just worked out with this tech guy in a real brainstorming session. Let's try that for fucking 15 million. You know, it is that pathetic. Our country is run, and it'd be insulting to call them childish, because children are fucking lovely and they're actually intelligent and they're compassionate. So I can't call them a bunch of kids, but I don't know, but find your own name for it. But they are not clued up. They are not attention to details. They are not interested in evidence base and actually saving money in the long term. And they see people as numbers. That's just how it feels to us. So spoiler alert, in my head when I was doing this the first time around, I had this fantasy that at the end there was going to be a moment where I go, the power is in you, you know, it's you. But you know, it is like, you know, it's collective action, and we are all units of power that come together and form a bigger power. And if we follow that through, then that we starts with I, yeah. And in terms of everybody in this room right now, there's a battle within your head to some degree, sometimes, maybe, certainly for some of you, maybe for many. And that's often with self-criticism, and it's often with a lack of self-compassion, or a lack of support in yourself to do what's right for yourself and looking after yourself. But as selfishly, yeah, thinking of the collective, we need you healthy. We need you happy. We need you comfortable. And quite a lot often that comes alongside with activism, comes just to life, is, oh shit, I should go to that, or oh, I should be doing that, or I should, oh, I'm not doing that good enough, sort of thing. And that's actually the first step, I think, is to make sure that you're comfortable enough in your own skin, and turn down that dial on self-criticism, turn up that dial on self-compassion. Self-compassion is disciplined self-kindness. So you might want to, you mightn't think you have to, but actually, if you wouldn't say some of the shit you say to yourself to me or someone else when we're suffering, so don't say it to yourself. So look after yourself, number one. The second thing is the you bit. And this is where being a union rep comes in. I don't know how many union reps we have in the room. Yeah, good. Nice. It's fucking hard work, isn't it? It's really hard work, and it's really rewarding work, but it's on top of everything else, isn't it? You've got your own today, and then when something goes wrong for somebody, you have to be there for them, and quite a lot of it's kind of informal, sort of like supportive chats and stuff. It doesn't amount to, yeah, but when it becomes a fucking hearing, it's like you suddenly turn into some sort of bloody barrister with a whole pile of stuff to bring in. It's a nightmare, it's stressful, and it's, you know, the man is coming at you, yeah. But in those moments, that's where one of those important bits of us, you know, collective action, we've got to look after ourselves, and we've got to look after our workers. And we need more reps. We desperately need more reps, because if there was loads of us in each of our workplaces, then it'd be a lot easier. But because there's not so many reps, certainly in ours, I'm on my own currently, but I've got a great colleague, Danny. Oh, am I okay for time? Yeah, yeah. Because I'm about a quarter of the way, not even. Okay, good. So you know, it really kind of, you can quite quickly burn out. You could quite quickly kind of struggle, and it's a lot to hold on to for just a very small number of people. So looking after our colleagues and our staff, it's not just good, and it's not just compassionate. It's also good PR, yeah, for collective action. If you're there for someone when they're suffering, if you're there to stick it to the man when they're being like dickheads, yeah, and they often are, like they seem to just have a policy for when it's convenient to them, and then just ignore it when it's not. And people suffer, and they leave them for weeks and months in these horrible states. Yeah, so being there for our staff and our colleagues and our patients or our customers as well, you know, making sure that we treat everybody with respect and kindness and compassion, yeah, and that's the solid foundation on which then the next level comes. Because when things start to hit the fan, yeah, if you've got the trust and the comfort with in relationships with your colleagues, if you've led by example, if you've quietly led by example, you don't have to be some big mouth like me. You know, if you're doing your job, if you're representing people, you're supporting them, then you're pushing at an open door to some degree. So when the horrible thing happens, and it always does, doesn't it? Whether it's been underpaid, or whether it's terms and conditions are shit, or whether it's not enough staff in the NHS, or whether it's insert problem or difficulty here, then that's the big opportunity for us to start, kind of, if you're talking with people that they know you're solid, they're going to come, they're going to talk, they're going to listen, they're going to be on board already. It's not going to be that hard a thing. But I guess the next thing, we've set up a branch very recently as well, is getting organised locally. We're not very organised locally because there's not that many of us. I happen to be the branch treasurer, the equalities officer, and this I've forgotten what the other one is like, but health and safety. That's it. Oops. But it's important that we kind of get a decent, solid sort of foothold in a sense. Collaboration. We did it with Unison. We did it side by side. Like the stronger, the bigger, the better. Yeah. I guess the us together bit then is connecting with the community and causes. Yesterday morning I was down at the Birmingham bin workers strike. I saw Jeremy Corbyn there. It was fantastic just to see everybody. Yesterday afternoon, I brought my daughter to the pots and pans for Palestine. We were all banging pots and pans, and we were lying across the street in Oxford Road, blocking the traffic. Like, I was a little bit nervous because there's a lot of right-wingers coming out these days with their stupid cameras and their internet channels and shit. But it's crucially important that we actually connect with different organizations, with different people. A year ago, all I was doing was shouting into the void of Twitter, pissed off with everyone and everything in terms of like unite, their pathetic stance on Palestine, their silence, disgusting. Sharon Graham recently, with her comments about I'm disappointed that they didn't do more on the fourth runway at Heathrow, and more into weapons and more into nuclear and nothing about the NHS. One of the things I think is that the unions have a lot to answer for. The bureaucratic, quite often bullshitty stuff that goes on there. But then I sort of realized, well, actually, union is us locally. It's you and the people around you. And if you've got good people around you, and if they're struggling, helping them to get good and comfortable, then you've got a good union. And we've got a good union locally. We've got some really good activists, really good people. But you know what? Every strike action, every picket day, we had a load of people that came with us, came from all of these different organizations. I don't know, is it? Oh, sorry. Oh, right. Okay. I'm not even going to look at that transcript. I don't know what it's going to. Does it speak Irish? Is the big question. Does anybody know this person's name? Yeah. Does anybody? I didn't either, because I was going to come in here today and I bought a very risky T-shirt. Yeah, very risky to the point where like someone might call me a terrorist. I thought those days were over for us Irish folk, but I suddenly read up on William. He's on remand at the moment. Is it the Filton 18? Does that ring a bell? Yeah. Well, he's on remand. He's been on remand 21 months. He's a Manchester lad. Yeah. His mum was in the Guardian the other day talking about it. His trial isn't going to be for another year, and he's on remand. And someone else, they let him off and gave them bail conditions, and the bloody government appealed it and got that person back in. These are fucking sitting in prison for spraying a bit of fucking paint on stuff. Now, he did it, yeah, last year. So he's been done for criminal damage, yeah. If he did it tomorrow or yesterday or last week, he'd be, looking at 14 years potentially. I mean, so I didn't wear the fucking T-shirt, obviously, yet, but there's some real value, basically, slightly sidetracked. Although I am at lunchtime going to have this and see if anyone wants to take a photo with me, because I'm thinking of trying to send it to him as a show of support. If no one wants to be pictured with it, we could do a little hands thing. I've been fantasizing about that. It might look quite nice if we get the photographer to give us a hand, maybe, but I am now, I've gone from nothing, to having all of these opportunities, much sometimes to the distress of my wife, because I'm away every weekend, sort of, going to stand up to racism, trans rights, Palestine, and it's payback, it comes over to and fro. We can look after each other. We're all connected. All of these struggles are connected. And you know what? One of the things to look out for is, because at the start I did a BBC interview, BBC Northwest, And I talked it over with my wife because our trust is a real bad history of whistleblowers getting done. So I talked it over with her, and I almost did, but they let me away with it because I'm a union rep. But I didn't. I asked the unions, what is the deal with when media ask us, to do stuff, and they said run it through the PR department. And that was the moment where I thought me and the unions are going to sort of take a little bit of a different path. We've set up a committee, our own committee, separate to the union specific. Obviously, we had union representation in there heavily, but we did our own thing. We decided as a group. We didn't let the bureaucracy of the unions get in the way, and we made our own decisions. And it's our union, yeah. They work for us. I know that's a bit of a cheesy thing, but it's fucking true. So don't let anybody, including the unions, including the employers, including the commissioners who hold the purse strings, or actually don't. And then you think NHS England must hold the purse strings, and they actually don't. And then finally, you've got the government. Yeah. So there's all those layers, and in a sense, if you think one of the ways to sort of fight this, I guess, or to try and win, is to figure out what those layers are and what each person wants and needs. So to the person who wants to make cuts, we might talk about productivity, or we might talk about, well, if you invest in one care coordinator in our service, we'll save you 197 hospital bed days. And that works out at £85,000 in NHS costs, or 150 in all those private hospitals you seem to love fucking paying for these days. Yeah. So you have an argument for everything if you can. Yeah. But also what we've learned is to keep it simple. A few 5 or 6 sound bites, points, just keep hammering it over and over again. Yeah. When one of the things that the media seemed to love every time we did an interview was, oh, you're not striking because of wages. You're striking because you haven't got enough staff. They're very impressed with that. And I just thought, well, what if we are fucking striking for wages? Because actually we desperately need more wages in the NHS, because there's an absolute staffing crisis, and they've stopped do loads of training, and any of the training they are doing that are increasing. There's no jobs for them, so people are actually in need of careers. Young people we need them to come to the NHS, and we need them to, at the end of the month, not be worrying about a big massive overdraft. We want them going out for a pint, or going out for a meal, or going to the butchers, or going to take money out of the wall of the ATM so it's used, so they don't bloody take it away. We need all of these things to happen. So when we're all connected, so it might sound, staffing, brilliant. We're fine with that. But if you ask for money for your wages, but it's all connected. Everything's connected. So I guess it's the important thing really, like I said at the start, is to figure it all out. It's dead straightforward. I'm sitting here talking. I don't know how we won our 21 staff, our 21 staff and our £1 million recurrent funding. One thing I do know though is that the managers were absolutely shocked when the news came in, and they didn't hide it. They didn't pretend or anything. They were like, "Fucking hell," But a few weeks later, because I was waiting for it, and I finally heard someone somewhere said they were getting it anyway. They were getting that money anyway, and for a trust that's all about the visuals, yeah. They didn't put the settlement of the strike action in their monthly or weekly vlog, or their communications, because they don't want to sort of treating everyone like kids. They don't want to be seen to be letting strike action look good. Well, do you know what's happened since? Collective grievance amongst all of the 6 CMHTs is on the go at the moment. A collective letter of concern amongst all the senior managers who have to apply for their own jobs. A collective letter of concern again from our services, because they're putting us all up in Bolton under one ops manager, which sounds a little bit weird. So that's the thing. If some of us fight, then it's going to act as a bit of a nice example to everybody else. And that's why I'm so desperately hopeful that the bin workers get a good result, because those absolute useless scumbags, sorry to cut, so that's bad, but Birmingham Council, like a Labour council, I mean, I maybe why I call them scumbags is because they charged me 14 quid on the clean air mileage thing, and then I got a £60 fine the last time I went down to the mega picket. So I'm just working through my stuff here, sorry. But to think that people are being demonized, for just wanting to live their lives comfortably, and then we've got oligarchs, billionaires, they're getting more money. It's a game to them how much they can accrue. It's unbelievable, But yeah, So I guess I'll probably shut up now because I've gone on for quite a while. But I guess I don't know what the winning strategy is. We might have got lucky. But we certainly got a lot of media attention. We were quite embarrassing, a lot. Andy Burnham was sprung with a clip of my interview on the radio, and he was kind of almost compelled then to go, I'm going to meet with them. And then when he met with us, obviously that's a good opportunity. If you can get your hands on someone in power, a politician, we went around to every politician. We tried to get to see them all. Only one of them, Andrew Western, my one actually, met with us. The rest of them all fobbed it off to, what's your man, who's the scandal happened, he was anti-Semitic and can't remember, he was the junior health minister. Andrew, fucking, I can't remember his name anyway, but they all pushed us towards him, and then he got done for some big scandal. So, but get your MP, get people. We set up one of those emails where everybody could send their email to the MP. We got a petition online to try and get like attention that way. Went into the town. We had stalls. We were trying to raise awareness. We had loads of picket days. We had themes on the picket days because it's bloody hard work not working. And we actually got lots of people involved who were things that I think we could have done better on is getting more famous faces out. There was some tentative suggestions that they would, and they didn't in the end. I don't think we utilized what you would call it, videos or online TikTok-y type stuff. I did a Christmas one dressed as Elf, but it didn't really take off too much. But it pleased all my friends because they've been wanting it for a long time. But yeah, so just I guess the winning strategy is the one that you figure out with your colleagues. Yeah, and the unions, the regionals were really, really helpful and really, really knowledgeable and really good. So and so your colleagues. But also, last thing is, it's when we're talking out in the media and when we're talking to employers, we are united. There's not one single difference of opinion amongst us. And then in the back room, we're like, oh, should we be going back to work now? Or, oh, I'm quite, so it's a coalition, a broad coalition. And you've got to figure out also what your colleagues want and try and make sure that you keep everybody on track. And that is one of the hard things, especially like over the winter months and stuff, like, trying to keep everyone motivated and carrying these signs. It's bad for the back, it's pretty tough stuff, Okay, I'll stop now, but thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, John. Brilliant. I think rather than just jump into hear from myself, it's important that you get a chance to ask any questions that you've got. I think it's part of this session that we cross-pollinate ideas. So is there anybody got anything that they would like to speak to John about or to discuss in terms of what he said could influence you and the issues you've got in your workplace? The one thing that I've got from it is I really wish I'd got an Irish accent in my negotiations with managers, because being able to say "you're fucking Egypt" is so much better than just speaking in posh BBC. Absolutely brilliant, John. Yeah, that's what they do. There is actually a thing. My employers did tell me that I'd got to go on a course to learn how to speak properly, so I didn't annoy people in my role as a rep. But I declined on that because I think it's part of my job to annoy people. But yeah, I think it's over to you guys for a bit. I've still got my session as well. We've got plenty of time. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Cool, I will do. Yeah, it's just what you said about the bin workers, and another thing about what you said at the end, John, about other people looking at your success and it having a ripple effect and so on. And I think some ways when your employer is not the decision maker, it's higher up the chain, actually you've got an advantage. Think of it as an advantage, because if you go for the higher up person, then you show that more people are going to have the same battle that you've just had, and you can go for immediate solidarity. I'll just take one example, and that is the bin workers that you mentioned, because I was up there yesterday, and it was absolutely clear that when they, at their conference, named the councillors and and Angela Rayner as people who should be intervening, because Angela Rayner could actually overturn the commissioners, could sack the commissioners, could actually because they own the debt that Birmingham has, she can actually say, well, we don't need it to be repaid back. We will work it into the national debt and whatever. You could see that they actually, were hitting the right notes. And I think that what that means for workers who are in a deadlock situation like they are at the moment, you can go for what they used to call, back when I was young, secondary action. That is people who are affected by the same decision maker, if not exactly the same employer. And it used to be used, with car parts manufacturers, and you'd go for the big Ford manufacturer, and you'd go and you'd send some of your strikers to the Ford factory, and they'd picket them out. Don't touch these parts, therefore stop the lines in the big factory. I think that's what the Birmingham bin workers should do now. It's too late to go round, have a ballot, do this, talk to your branch secretary, oh, can we do this, that, and the other? Go and picket out the housing department. Go and picket out the libraries. Go and picket out and spread the strike from below. And I think that is really what is needed to win the Birmingham bin workers strike. And it is possible. It has been done. Previous week, I was just out with the mighty cleaners, and they are mighty, in Canary Wharf with the IWGB. And they didn't go and pick it outside Mighty. They pick it outside Ernst & Young. And they had placards which saying, you earn on average in this building £723,000 a year. We earn on average £13.85 an hour. I know the year and the hour doesn't work, but the big difference was made and whatever, and you could hear them for miles down Canary Wharf, and it was a good day. But that's what I think. Don't look at it as a disadvantage. Look at it as an advantage. You can go and do secondary picketing. Yeah,
one of just because if I have to respond at the end, I'll probably forget absolutely everything. But just that's a really good point. The unions kept making sure every time I said let's go and picket, they're like, it's not picket, it's a demo. Because you have to picket outside your place of work. You also have to have your dispute with your employer. So even though we knew that our employer did not hold the purse strings and could not technically solve it in a sense, we still had these meetings, once a month, and they couldn't back out the meetings because that looked bad, sort of thing. But really, so you have to have the dispute with your employer, even though you can include everyone else and really target them completely. But the second thing is like you have to have your pickets at your place of work. But the demonstrations, we had a few of them, like over at Total building outside Andy Burnham's office. We had them as well when the Integrated Care Board, which is the commissioners, money, had their monthly meeting, their board meeting, and we were outside there. We were noisy. We were in their way. We were like trying to talk to them. We went into their board meeting with signs, and we went into the trust board meeting with. Actually, they stopped us bringing in signs, but we were kind of annoying basically. That thing you said, the working the local debt into the national debt, austerity is an absolute wonderful creation for these people. They love to use austerity to absolutely hammer us to keep inequality going. And in like in Manchester, also whatever you call them, like they that's what they were doing. They're fobbing off the national debt, little bits of it, into different localities so that they control us better. And even in Manchester, and even have Andy Burnham and co. Like on the one hand, they'll say, well, we're 90 million. We're getting 90 million a year less in our mental health services compared to everywhere else in the country, despite having twice as many people with mental health problems dying young, 4 times as many people with mental health problems dying younger than more affluent areas. And we've got a deficit, from them not giving us enough money. But they flip it and they go, oh, we've got a black hole. We've got a debt. So they don't pay us enough money. And then they call it a debt that we owe them. It's fucked. It is absolutely fucked. And that's how they use it. They just use it to batter us and keep us down. So, thanks.
Yeah. Frank Ellis, I am a member of TSSA, but I'm also a member of Unite because I worked in a factory in Lincolnshire, which is owned by Siemens. And they contracted out some specialist engineering works And it went all right for a while. But in reality, the contractor had put too low a bid in. So they just went bankrupt. So people were left with no wages. And if you are in that structure, if you were asking for, it was a total mess because there isn't a great deal. Most unions have now been through this with members, where an employer goes bankrupt. You just become another claimant against the company for your wages. And if you are dealing with this, even if a company is in a position where it can't recruit because it's put too low a bid in, and it put the bid on and say everybody's going to be on the national minimum wage, which isn't realistic. I don't know how you deal with that as a union within the modern structures of employment.
I guess I'd love to be able to give the answer, but similar, I don't know either. But what I do know is that's happening a lot in the NHS. In mental health services, it's written in the documentation that there's a privatisation plan. There's an expectation that trusts will spend 25% to the vast majority, is a quote, of their community mental health budget on private organisations. They call them VCSEs, voluntary community social enterprise, but no VCSEs, no charities or nice organisations can bid for these massive services. They don't even have the infrastructure. So what happens is that these private companies come in and they sort of treat it as a loss leader. They can't quite afford it. They're not going to make massive money the first time around, but they'll give a really low estimate. And the only way they can do that is then to bring down everybody's wages, to make conditions poor and make the service that they provide to patients or customers much worse. So we've got a very, very similar challenge, and I guess that I don't think once the horse is bolted sort of thing to some degree, if they let that happen in the NHS, it's happening. We had there's a massive American company called Maximus, and they took over a brand, Remploy. Do you remember Remploy? Yeah. I guess I shouldn't sort of like pick on companies that have lots of lawyers too closely, but I think their work was questionable, shall we say. They got a £3 million contract while we have all of those staff in place already. But you know, once they were in, it was very hard to end the contract and get that back into the NHS. It actually didn't get back, and they've given it to another private practice. But I think once it's happened, it'll just be loads of horrible failed examples until someday someone comes into power and they go, look at all this ridiculous things we're doing. I don't know if anyone's from probation services. No. Well, a few years ago, they did a privatization effort there, like where they literally almost drew a line down the centre of staff, half of them private and half of them government run still. It was absolute disaster. And the only way that even was telling them for years it's a disaster, it seems to take them years to figure out that this is ridiculous. Like, there's no place for big profits, certainly in the NHS, where if you go to a hospital and you look around the state of the place, you think, right, how are you going to make 23 to 25% for your dividend holders out of this shithole? You know, so I don't know what the answer is, but for NHS, I think what we need to do is keep our NHS public. They've got a stall in there. Get involved in that. Fight it. But yeah, as for your question, I'm sorry, I'm in the same boat as you. Does anyone else know? Any ideas? Come on, someone's got to have the answer.
We'll work on getting the answer. Gentleman in third row.
Yeah, Andy in Unite First Bus. Yeah, it's a really timely session because we're about to be franchised, and that opens up a completely strange situation for us. They've split the branch in half from above because one depot is going to be franchised before another. But obviously the people will be pulling the strings. The companies, bus companies, will now be hired to manage and run services, etc. But it'll be West Yorkshire Transport, which is controlled by the Labour mayor, will be in charge of setting fares and routes. And obviously that will create the kind of pressure that you're talking about, which is at the moment the companies are coining it in. But once once the West Yorkshire is determining the wages or the prices and all the rest, that might pitch us into some sort of conflict. So I think actually it's very useful what you were writing about, quite complex. It would be useful if you wrote that up, even in an anonymous capacity. And Troublemakers site started to bring together stories about how we organize around these issues. I know someone in housing who's going to be speaking later has written a very good discussion thing about how they organized and that. But I think that the second problem is the union is very complex. You know, you've got a single, I'm from the Post, where it's a big national, originally Royal Mail, big national union, all the offices sort of would meet in conferences, etc. This is like a local union for local people. The reps go to a mysterious regional body and then a national body, etc. You've got regional officers. So, you know, as a relatively new person, you know, it'd take a few years probably to become a rep. It's not a workplace, so you have to figure out how to organize people and find the people and get them to branch, etc. But all of a sudden, there's like a new factor that's come in, which is they've just declared a new party, Sultana and Corbyn. And I think we have to use this hours in momentum to maximum effect. This will accelerate and mark out all the workers who are more political, all the firefighting you've been done about the people talking about reform or talking about immigrants in the canteen, and you know you're trying to push back. You'll find the people who are against that, and we'll be able to organize them also at the political level, locally and regionally, if we want to sort of lobby West Yorkshire. So it's a tremendous opportunity. Tremendous. They say 300,000 have joined or said they want to join in 24 hours. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, there are moves. There was a meeting online of 900 trade unionists that the SP organized. They said they're going to organize sort of meetings by union. But I think we should grasp that from both hands. And conferences like this and movements, you've got to do the nuts and the bolts, but you've also got to keep the big picture, see how they relate, and pull every lever to advance the struggle. And I think that will be a huge opportunity to organize loads of people who use buses, who work in the buses themselves and other transport sections, etc., and maybe the admin who we don't really ever meet because they're totally different, etc., and they're not at the depot level, they're at the, you know, citywide level, etc., and actually, you know, really deploy a sort of struggle. In fact, out of momentum came the struggle for franchising originally in West Yorkshire. So that shows you the kind of things you can do where we can combine our union work, right, and not sort of abandon it, but partly leapfrog it by organizing the political workers around us and using that to re-energize the branch, using that to push things like Palestine, right, in the anti-fascist movement, etc., and using that to actually really push back against the left, the bureaucracy of the unions, both right and left. etc. And the only thing I'd say about that is, as trade unionists, we should have a voice in that, which is to say it's got to be rank and file democracy, not a bunch of MPs that run it, but the members, etc., and all the rest. It's got to be proper organization in the unions, democratic and locally, etc. It's got to declare, you know, for the class struggle, and not just sort of elections or everything, and everything else is just kind of on the side, like a little bit of stuff building up for the election. It's the other way around. The election is where we test how successful we've organized the class struggle. And the third thing I'd say as a socialist is, you know, if you're going to create a mass struggle against capitalism, you might as well get rid of it. And the only way to do that is through revolution and for a new system where we know how to run as workers. We run everything and fix it. We can run a new society without question. And, you know, as Sarah Sultana herself said, it should be, in that meeting, it should be proudly socialist. And absolutely, and you know, the way to get rid of capitalism is through mass struggle and revolution, ultimately.
Solidarity to that, brother. Thank you. Gentleman on the end there. This is good. I'm worried about my chance to speak, but there are currently 3 people waiting. That's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name's Dave Chappell, and I'm here from Bridgewater Trades Council in Somerset. And I'm not here to make revolutionary rhetoric, but to ask make a specific point in the light of John, what you said about the media. I was a Somerset postman for nearly 40 years, and between 1999 and when I retired in 2016, because of you know, you talk proudly about your strength, and we were, you know, a little town of 40,000 people, but we ended up being known all over the United Kingdom because of our strength. And that strength, because Royal Mail started to attack us, and because our organization got stronger and stronger, Royal Mail put more and more effort into smashing us. And the result was that we had a whole series of unofficial strikes. So And by that, I mean just lightning walkouts that we prepared in a committee, maybe a day or two before. And between 1999 and 2016, we must have had 12 strikes, serious strikes, of which 2 were official. And the 2 strikes that we didn't win were the official strikes. Every single unofficial strike we won, and they were mostly over bullying and harassment or unfair dismissals. And so, you know, our little town in Somerset and our little Royal Mail depot got a kind of a national reputation. And very quickly, John, because I really enjoyed your contribution, and I'd like to sort of, if not get you down to Somerset, then at least speak to us online, because you know, you're entertaining as well as passionate. Is this, that because our strikes were illegal and unofficial, my branch, the Bristol branch, you know, 5,000 strong, a strong branch, walked away from it. And the National Union walked away from it. So the National Communications Officer and the National Secretary, even if they didn't repudiate it, which is what they're supposed to do legally, and to be fair to them, they didn't, they let us get on with it. So for each one of those strikes, official and unofficial, over 12 years, me, the shop steward, was on TV putting out our own press releases because the unions were nowhere. So it's not easy, and it is stressful. But if ever workplaces can get in that strong position again, and hopefully there are still some, you can end up doing your own media stuff because the National Union will back away just because it's illegal. So you're in total control. And part of the reason we won, I mean, there was one strike where the Royal Mail manager came down from London and said, Mr. Chappell, I've got £1.5 million to smash you. You know, you ain't going nowhere. And we won that one. And that was partly because of the media stuff we had. So the stronger you are, control your own media, just like John did.
Just a very quick one. Yeah, I mean, we set up a committee. You've got what feels like fairly total control. Even the regional reps have to listen to their members, you know. But just a quick one. The posties went out on strike. It might have been 2-3 years ago. I can't remember. But I dropped my kid off, and on the way back, I was like, right, I'm going to go down to the picket. But I went to Lidl and got, you know, all those big trays of donuts. You know, the big massive trays. Yeah. And I went down to the picket, and there was no sign of them. So I knocked on the door, and I went, and they were inside, yeah. So I fucking handed the big tray of donuts to the scabs. I didn't realize. So that's my admission for today. It's all union talk, and I accidentally dropped off a tray of bloody donuts to the scabs that were undermining the picket. So I'm sorry, but well, I appreciate yeah, and I'll definitely come online to Somerset. I don't think the Nissan Micra is going to make it all the way down, but I'll definitely come online.
Rana Arya from Hammersmith and Fulham Council. So our employers are the decision makers only if we let them. And as Unison members, and more importantly, being in a democratic country, why would we let them make the decision for us? Women didn't get their rights by waiting for the government and officials to grow a heart. Clearly, they don't have any. So I in my branch, I think that the most effective thing that we've done as a branch is talking to our members, and not only finding out what their challenges are in their respective section, but getting them to think, what does the solution look like? Don't wait on the union to come up solutions for you. You know, you are well articulated, you know your section. If you need time, think on it and then come back to us, and then we can work together and it empowers members to understand that they have power within themselves, and not waiting on, you know, the branch, on the officials, on the national to make their terms and their reference and everything better, whatever it may be. And so I think that when I engage with my members, I find what is their main concern. So whether it's to do with Palestine, trans, pay, and in those things, I think the main thing that I focus on is, okay, what does the solution look like? Do you think you can do a briefing? Do you think you can do a campaign? And then support them. And that's been from a sleepy branch, we're slowly, hopefully, and like you and the other speakers, getting more, we're able to influence from the grassroots by coming up with our own solution. Thank you.
You okay? Oh no, we got one more. I think if anybody else wants to.
I'm Mark. I'm a Unite member. I currently work for Sheffield City Council, but before that, I worked for Citizens Advice. And I thought it might be interesting just to talk about something that happened with Citizens Advice. It was just after the COVID lockdown. And Citizens Advice, I worked as a debt advisor. So people who are in debt and needed advice on how to manage those debts or get rid of them. And the way the system worked is the government funded Quango, and that Quango then gave pots of money to charities like Citizens Advice. And along with that money came very strict and difficult targets, essentially. So after COVID, they were re-looking at this structure and actually were cutting funding while also making the targets even more difficult. Now, the challenge from, I suppose, a trade union point of view is it was a national issue, and we all work for these different charities. So I work for Citizens Advice Sheffield. You know, people would have worked for Step Change and various other charities. So what we did was we basically set up within Unite an unofficial combine of, for those who don't necessarily know what a combine is, it's a group of workers working within the same sector. And within Unite, the formal structures didn't necessarily allow for that very well because Unite is structured more regionally. And also, you know, obviously within workplaces, whereas this was a national issue across a sector, and our regional organizer, you know, to be fair to them, industries didn't necessarily understand the specifics of this quite complicated funding system with debt advice. So we set up this national combine. It was all organized online on WhatsApp, on Zoom meetings. And similar to what you were talking about earlier was about who are the actual decision makers in this. Well, it's not Citizens Advice. It's not even really MAPS. Sorry, MAPS was this Quango. It's actually the MPs, the politicians, the government who's actually providing the initial funding. So we essentially did a lobbying effort of MPs on social media. We produced a briefing for MPs and luckily managed to get a few relatively high profile MPs on side who were willing to make interventions in the House of Commons. And we actually won, which kind of surprised us, I think, because we didn't necessarily feel like we had the strength to win, but we did. And normally that wouldn't actually be the kind of trade union campaign I would advocate for in the sense of a lobbying effort. That's not the kind of union organising that I would normally think is the most effective. But in this way, in this specific example, it did work. And I think the combine of not of working more informally, thinking actually Unite structures didn't work for us. How can we organise across the nation in these different workplaces with different employers, but all with this one issue? I think that, I guess, was the main lesson to come out of that you don't necessarily have to work within the formal bureaucratic structures of the union in order to get things done.
Okay, I'm going to take chair's comment now. I'm going to have my go. I'm going to scrap my speech as well because John set the example there. What got me into this, and this is going to be from personal, it's not my role in the NEU as an officer of disabled or anything like this, was actually mental health services from the point I'm at. I was driven to be referred to mental health services by county council support, basically, because I stood up to the council as a head of a pupil referral unit. There's a bit of a story to it, because I was precarious in terms of my mental health anyway, after a breakdown of relationship, and as a consequence of that, loss of my house. But no fault attributed to that point of view, but actually it was because I was working too hard and I'd probably neglected the relationship. It wasn't acrimonious or anything, but I just not realised the predicament that working as a teacher had put me into. I was the head of the pupil referral unit, which had 3 sites, and we found out completely by chance that although we were going to be offsteaded, we knew we were going to be offsteaded, then a advert was put in the paper privatising. It was put out to tender. The service was put out to tender. And I'd got a good team of people around me in my unit, and we basically managed, with one of the other units, we cooperated out with the 3, 2 of us passed Ofsted. The reason why they said they'd put it out to tender was they didn't believe we were a functional service. The reason why it wasn't a functional service is because the council weren't providing the staff in order to do that. What led to my demise, I would say at that point, was the fact that it took the way they were treating people, like, to the senior management. And I thought that that would be like the way to change things. I was very naive from that point of view, that you're looking after some of the most difficult people in the society. I remember one scenario where we'd organised a reward trip for these young people who were coming from such hard backgrounds and been kicked out of education. There's abuse, there's all sorts of, domestic violence, all sorts of things we're dealing with. We'd organised a reward trip, and I was told to cancel it while the kids were on the bus, ready to go bowling. And they said, it's because we haven't got the funding, we can't afford to pay for this bus. So I said, well, you're in the predicament. If I tell these kids they've got to get off the bus because they can't now go bowling, that bus will be destroyed. I would destroy it. I paid for the trip out of my own pocket, using cash, and I asked for an immediate refund. And they said, no, we can't do that. It has to go through. And I go, but it's bank holiday. That was my money. I've got my money out of the bank, for that time. One of you can go to the cash point, and we just passed it out to management. They didn't do that. Various things about safeguarding had happened. Very soon after that, the fence got damaged. You wouldn't believe this story, really. The fence of my unit got damaged. And it did have a 18-foot high fence around it, which we used to joke about. Largely, it was to protect the outside population from the kids in case they escape. But realistically, it was for safeguarding reasons. And a local supermarket got raided, and they crashed the getaway car through the gates of our building while being chased by the police. So they closed the unit that I worked for temporarily, allegedly, saying that it was a safeguard. And we all got moved onto one site, and then it was closed permanently. And then I realised that the new unit that I'd been moved to, even though I was still theoretically the head of a centre, I was not head at that centre. And it was fairly obvious that they were complicit with the council in terms of saving money and not running it properly. Turnover of staff was really, really high. So I reported it for safeguarding issues, which I thought would be an immediate, let's take care of this and get it sorted out. I was interviewed by the Deputy Director of Education. I won't mention, I might have mentioned it already, but I won't mention the council. The Director of Education, he wanted to go through all of the things that I knew and all of the circumstances, and I thought we were getting somewhere. And the following week, I was told that I was going to be suspended for safeguarding concerns because I'd spent too much time counselling children. And the actual allegation was that I was grooming young children in order to have sex with them at the age of 19. I was that desperate. The fact was, at the time, I was celibate. I'd been celibate for 12 years at that point. Obviously, change of relationships and everything came into that as well. That's where that comes from too. I was just shocked, and I kind of fell apart. And through the mental health services, I think over the 2-3 years, I saw about 6 different people. Eventually, I was given a diagnosis. And I can remember saying to him, I don't really mind what a diagnosis is. I just want to know, just make sure it's nothing crap. because by now this was such an anathema to me. And they gave me a diagnosis, talked about medication. It was bipolar with emotional unstable personality disorder. Fundamentally, I didn't really know what to do with myself, but we went through a medication review. And I said, is it going to actually iron my shirts in the morning? Is it going to get me out of bed? The crisis point was when I literally spent 4 days trying to get out of the door to post a letter. And I realized that my job had done this to me, the way I'd been treated had happened to me. And I decided in the end not to take the medication. I decided that I had to fix it. And what's strange about that, I cut a few things out after that because I was supposed to take medication. Don't listen to this. I was supposed to take medication. I knew that they checked up on whether the prescription had been cashed. So I used to get the prescription and then put the medication in the bin as soon as I left the place because I knew that it was about me. I knew that there wasn't really anything wrong with me. I knew this is the way I'd been treated as a child and the way I'd been treated by my employers. And I remember in an interview, they said, like, you have to appreciate that it can't all be about you. There is no I in team. And I think that's where it changed. It's around about 2008, 2009 by now. And I just said, like, yeah, but there is me in team. And I can, as me, make changes if I take things forward. So I'm going to link that little story there about my drive to like change things with the precarious nature of work. Typically, because I was going to ignore my script at the time when I do want to refer to it, my computer's turned off. So at the moment in teaching, I still think that there's this very strong precarious nature of it. It was mentioned in the educators group. Supply teachers are being precariously manipulated by supply agencies. While teaching is very hard to recruit and retain, we know that. The supply teacher agencies are recruiting new teachers for 2 years, promising them that they will give them placements that will get them through their training. And yet the young teachers are not being paid the wage they would get if they were employed in the workplace. They're being paid agency rates, and the agencies are making a profit off of the schools on the basis of the young workers. And at the end of it, these young workers have got no like long-term commitment from the school. They can't even guarantee that they would pass their early career teacher 2 years with that, because it has to be done within the workplace. You can do it in a series of workplaces, but fundamentally there's been used to fill in gaps and not being given the money in order to do that. The Harris-Matt chain, as far as I'm concerned, Matt just means money at the top. Because that's where the CEOs are on salaries of, I mean, I was in a conversation about a week ago and I mentioned like, oh, some of them are on 275,000. And one of them said that their CEO for one school was on 275,000. I realized how bad this had gone. You're talking like the Matt chain, senior Matt chain, £500,000, and you won't ever find them in a workplace and nothing about education. I only found out about 3 weeks ago that now you don't actually even need to have been a teacher to be a head teacher. They will recruit directly from business because most of the academy chains are run as a business rather than education. The Harris chain are currently recruiting actively from Jamaica, particularly in crafts and dance and drama and areas like that, which is further creating vulnerability for teachers who are qualified in those areas. And it's precarious enough as it is because we don't know that those things are going to be valued by the government. But they will only retain them for the length of the time that they really need them. And as soon as there's a drop in numbers in the school, these teachers that have given up their lives in Jamaica, have come all of the way over, brought family with them, are then told you're not needed. And then they're incredibly vulnerable then because of their visa situation, because their visa depends on their employment status. And this is again being used by the big chains, just taking people and using them for their purposes. This is the deliberate creation of precarious employment for all people to undermine collective bargaining power. I work in Stratford-upon-Avon. Everybody thinks it's a really, really nice area. I've asked members and other teaching staff, particularly supply staff who are very poorly paid, why they like working in Stratford-upon-Avon. And they said because it's got so many food banks. It has got a large number of food banks for an area that you think, I think there are about 8 in Stratford-upon-Avon. And therefore, you've got teachers using, and supply staff in particular, using food banks and be able to sustain themselves and living, most in rented accommodation, which is ridiculously expensive. We know young people, no chance of buying their houses. Everybody is in a precarious situation. if it's a trade union issue, it is a class issue. They've decimated the working classes. Currently, they're attacking the middle classes. And I think that's where we all need to be me to start off with and stand up and then unite and fight this. So my suggestions were that we need to map the decision making in the circumstances we're in. I've mapped my whole workplace, and I've also started to map the whole of Warwickshire in terms of who's active, who's gone to meetings, who's attending stand up to racism. If I ask them to come and support me, who will come and support me? Equally, those who will not. You can find a hotspot and constantly getting people around you. One of the things that I find difficult, because I do understand unity, I do understand like following policy and following the whip in certain political situations, but my natural instincts is that of a lone wolf. And there are times when you have to go like, this needs to be done, I will do it, and then take some of the flack. That often comes with, we have a meeting, let's say from a union point of view, and it says who's going to contact the members. And then an action point is we will find someone to contact the members. I'll just do it. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, well, we didn't negotiate. We didn't decide who was going to do it. By that point, it's too late. If you're going to do it, just get on with it. And then we can work from then on upwards. We need to actually look at the way in which they manipulate things. Like I said about safeguarding educational quality arguments to pressurize many decision makers. Like if there are not enough people on duty, that's not because people aren't like going out there and working in the way they should do. That's because there aren't enough staff. Getting the funding in all the right place. My management team in my individual workplace, 11 people are a seventh of the whole wage for the whole place. It's 1.3 million for 11 members of staff. Director of HR, I don't even know what director of HR, surely head of HR, something like that, £90,000. And all I can see that they do is actually make life difficult for people and try and get rid of them on competency and capability or misconduct, etc. So I think because I'm aware we've got a little bit more time for questioning. If we can build solidarity using different categories of workers with any workplace, I will stand up. I don't mind. I'll stand up for the cleaners. I'm trying to get the cleaners in my workplace to actually join the NEU. They can do that because the more people that we've got, my support staff and supply members of staff are far more belligerent about wanting their rights than the teachers are. And I think the teachers are very worried about like being picked on. They don't want to cause trouble. They don't want to stand up because they know that they're precarious. They know they can be got for not following contract. We've got this thing in our contract as well that says any other duty considered reasonable by the head teacher. We're in a situation where we've got a new build and they're saying that it's reasonable for the teachers to go in the summer holiday, or summer break I call it because it's not really a holiday, and move all of the furniture into the new build because they don't have enough support staff. Like, no, you need to get more site staff. If I do it, I'm putting somebody else out of work. Like, you need more people from that point of view. I think it's just important we use the next 10 minutes for interactive discussion. There's lots and lots of stories I could talk about, but if you're in a precarious situation, it's horrible when you're on your own, as I discovered. My last point of that is in my last mental health review meeting, I still have to have 2 a year just to make sure I'm not going to go completely rogue. I mentioned all of the things that I'd been doing. I mentioned the things with Troublemakers at Work. And the report back was, we need more people like you in society, not that I am the problem. Like, if more people were prepared to stand up for themselves and call out the bullshit, then we might be able to get somewhere. So my call to action for you is call out the bullshit. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I was going to ask, you mentioned kind of you map out all the decision makers kind of related to your work in your area. Once you've done that, what's your kind of criteria? What do you look at for who would be an effective target in there? Is it just who's at the top, or do you are there?
I look for what are called organic leaders. I think sometimes if you follow the various leadership models and union models, how you get them and building workers' power, it still relies on a kind of a hierarchy. But there are some people that that when they talk in their workplace or they will attend rallies, that they will like speak openly and from the heart, and then people will join in with them. Stephen this morning is a classic example of that. Stephen, the bin worker, classic example of that. He did not want to be a union leader. He doesn't want to stand up and do these things. But when the time was there to speak, he spoke out. So if I go into a workplace, I will ask not who is like the leader, who's the rep in the school, it's who do you listen to? And like this, you might not hold a position. I think it's really important that you speak out so that we learn from each other from that point of view. In education, I don't know if it's true the other year, they're what called like reps, rhinos, rep in name only, that they wanted to get the position, they've been elected to it, then do absolutely sod all. And in my experience, they actually quite often like them work with the management to make sure that they are there. You see people that have got the credibility. It's easy for me to do because I'm a ballot volunteer. I'm an officer with the NEU as well, so I've got access to various membership websites and things. But my initial priorities are to find out who's voted positively every time they said there was a vote. And I'm a strong believer in walking the floor. So I target two things. I target the places where there are the strong people who will always carry out an action. If you just ask them to like, oh, you know, really stuck, can you bring some cakes at the weekend? They will bring cakes. You know, you can rely on them. It's not like, will you stand up and give a speech or anything? Get those people involved. But also I look for the schools that haven't got any reps at all, because you can almost guarantee in those places they are being like trodden on, and there will be somebody who, I'm lucky because I do casework. There's two parts of casework. One is you support the member. But the second part of it is once you've won, because losing is not in my vocabulary, there are different kinds of not winning maybe, but I won't use lose. One of the problems we face, I think, at the moment is most people just walk away from it rather than staying and fighting. I've currently got 3 grievances out against my management. I've got 1 grievance out against me by my management, and I'm taking my employers to the employment tribunal. But the one thing I don't want out of it is a settlement agreement. If you ask me what I want out of it, it's not even going to be money. I would trade all of the money for my boss to be fired. I think he should lose his job. If he could stand up in a meeting and tell me like he's not having any member of his staff telling how to run his fucking school, you need to fucking do what you're told, I think he should lose his job. And that is part of what we're doing. So in those places, if I've supported a member and then they're going to stay in the workplace, I would ask them to become a rep. And I will support them to be reps. One of the things I think we need is buddy support for people in those situations, which doesn't actually exist. I think one of the things from my point of view is that if you are a rep, you need support from your union. And quite often they just assume you're going to be okay and you manage it on your own. Organic leadership, I think, was where it is. Who are the people that can make a difference? There are a lot of them in this room. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick ones. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was about, you know, sort of almost like a non-traditional win, you know, where it wasn't the picket line. I mean, in a way, like the picket line's quite old-fashioned, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's brilliant. Like, don't get me wrong, don't hate me. But you know, there's so many more angles on things. You know, with social media, with the media, with being able to send emails. We set up a group email account from our little committee and our staff, yeah, that had a degree of anonymity. We didn't have to put our names to it, so we could contact the chief executive. We could relay the information we wanted to. We could question things with a little bit more flexibility. But I guess one of the things these days, they use productivity quite a bit as the euphemism for austerity, or and I guess there is something in offer better, offer an alternative. The Stand Up to Racism allies came very close in Runcorn recently to having a great victory. The reform person won by just a few votes, and they were out hammering doors trying to, but they didn't have an alternative party. They just said, don't vote Republican. And there's a not a very well-known theory called reactance theory. And if you don't have an alternative, and you narrow someone's choice, they're actually more likely to pick that thing. So the gentleman there, when you mentioned the Your Party, the new initiative, I'm one of the 300,000 who signed up because I'm not saying I'm going to join it when the time comes, but I want to shape it. I want my little say in it early on. And I think, you know, whether it ends up being a disaster like every other political party remains to be seen. But one thing we do need is we need to give people choice. And that, I think, is relevant when we're in dispute or we're asking our employers for something, is if you can give them a choice, another choice. If they're thinking of cutting back, give them a good rationale as to why that doesn't make sense. If they're thinking of paying you less and you want to be paid more, give them a rationale why you want to be paid more and why it makes sense on productivity grounds. We can help out our community, and the fact that a lot of our staff are worried about their overdrafts, and actually they will be much more comfortable, much happier place to work, less turnover, you know, whatever the narrative is that can give the person a bit of a choice in the situation. And then obviously, yeah, leave it at that.
Cool. There's a question going to come up on chat, but I'm going to point out the fact that I don't want anybody to miss out on questions, so I'm definitely going to be around at lunchtime. And if anybody wants my email or anything like that, I'm perfectly happy to share that. But we do have the advantage that we're in the room where the food is. So if we finish it like before anybody else gets here, then you get best choice. So I'll take the question on. Yeah, I can't see that from here. Yeah, for Andrea. Is it Andrea who'd like to speak?
Hi. Yeah, thank you very much. So my name's Andrea Egan, and I am I'm from Bolton Unison, but I do sit on Unison's NEC. I'm actually going for I'm going for the general secretary candidacy actually when it opens up next week, because I absolutely just want to pick up on some of the issues about the bureaucracy of the union. It's not just any one union, all of the unions out there, and it's time that workers took back their unions, if not actually claimed them, because some would argue that they're not going to get them back. They've never had them. But one of the big initiatives that's one of the big initiatives that's going on at the minute in Unison is the organising to win strategy. And the reason why I'm raising that is because on the NEC as a left NEC member, myself and a number of comrades pushed for organising to win, changing the strategy of our union. It were nothing more than a servicing union, and I've been for 30 years. So 3 years ago, we pushed through motions to conference and members agreed those motions. So I just wanted to pick up the schools issue that you were talking about. And they are our big initiatives at the minute, schools, which you're absolutely on point when you describe them. They're all little businesses. They've become little businesses over the last 15 years since the academy programme started. And social care, you know, they've been pushed from local authority provision now out into private sector. And that is where our members are out there and they're really struggling. So if you're in the room and you work in a school, there are organising opportunities for you as members to become more active under the organising. We're doing it under the, it's called the Triple SMB, but it's the new schools negotiating body that's looking at the terms and conditions of associate and support staff. So if you're in the room and you're in a school and you've not heard of that, please Google it and get yourself signed up for it, because one of the things we are seeing is, I share your frustration about stewards in schools over the years. I think they've just felt very isolated, and what could they do as a single rep in a school? But we are now building a massive body of a network for school support staff. As far as representation, you're absolutely right, looking for the natural leaders, not necessarily the ones that step forward to say, well, I wouldn't mind doing that. And quite rightly, as you've said, then do nothing. They use it as a bit of a badge for themselves to protect just themselves. I mean, there is so much going on in schools after the years and years of cuts that they face, you know, from the contracts to the working conditions. We're seeing so many of our teaching assistants who are working above and beyond the grade. I feel that the lines have been blurred over the last number of years on what your job expectations are, but the organising that is now taking place. I really do urge people, if you're in Unison, to get involved, sign up for it. And social care, I know you were going to have a speaker on your panel today, Julie Mulligan, who is one of our NEC members. She's been an NEC member, but she's in the neighbouring branch to me. And Julia's branch and myself in Bolton have done quite a lot on the migrant workers at the moment. So social care has been broken for a number of years, and it's been really difficult for us to coordinate workers within that sector, simply because the sooner you get them on board and get them trained up, then they're leaving to go and work in a lot less volatile environment, less stressful environment. But then what appeared a couple of years ago and came under our radar were the migrant workers in care sectors, where the government had reached out overseas and said, oh, come and work for social care. And they did. They came in numbers, and what we've realised is that many of these members are now in modern day slavery under a sponsorship. So there is an awful lot of organising going on in the private care sector. So if, again, I'm really sorry I can't be in the room today. I have another appointment this afternoon that keeps me in Bolton. But if anybody wants to know more about getting involved in the organising to win and stepping up, then Ian Ellison and one of the organisers there will put you in touch with me. But I think the key bit is, as you've said, it's working with our members on the issues that impact them. You know, we've got to stop listening to what the bureaucracy is telling us what we can and can't do, and recognise our own power as workers. And we can do that, you know, getting rid of the shackles of the servicing model of many of our trade unions, and recognising that when we do come together, the power does lie with us. So I'll leave it there. I found your speech is really interesting, certainly from yourself, from the mental health, because I know quite a number of the mental health workers that were on strike with you. I found your speech really illuminating. It was brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity of you putting this event on. I found it really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That's absolutely excellent. I fully agree with you. Good luck with the General Secretary or Deputy General Secretary, if it was, position. I think that's going on as well within the NEU at the moment. We've got a number of candidates, but one of them is definitely pulling on the idea that teachers need to reclaim their classrooms. What does worry me is you can be elected to relatively high positions in many unions with a turnout as low as 4%, because members don't actually vote. I think in education it's because they're so busy, but a lot of the time it's, I think, because people have lost what unionism is about. Currently, I think in the public sector, it's only 22% of workers actually belong to a union. And so it's actually recruiting those that aren't in the union as well as part of that mapping process. Nobody's rushed in, and we're 6 minutes over time, but I've heard other rounds of applause. So whilst I'm sure that if you do go to the food, you're going to help other people get their choices rather than just scoff the lot before they get here. Unless anybody's got anything else, I think that's a very good opportunity for us to finish, and John and I can be around, and we're perfectly happy to answer any more questions you've got. And definitely thank you to Andrea for that question raised online. That was an important one, and some very good points were made in that as a closing statement. So on the basis of that, I don't need to make one. Thank you for your cooperation. That was excellent.